Hey, we back, and I'm here on BTD6 today. And as you may know, the fish path of the new Beast Handler Tower got a big nerf right after its release, which reduced the thrashing damage by a lot. This doesn't stop it from being able to one-shot MOAB class balloons, but the damage it does when not one-shotting them is much lower. The devs have stated that this was a bug, but many of people have been complaining that the damage reduction is too hard, barely does anything to MOAB class balloons now, etc, etc. Personally, I see how obviously this is a huge nerf, and since its cost is so high when you're buffing it with the other Beast Handler towers, it is kind of sad, but all things considered, the tower's insanely good. As far as I know, it has the only bad insta-kill in the entire game besides Paragons, and I think it's still a good tower even with the nerf. So, reasonable. But I've seen quite a few videos the last day or so talking about it, as is natural, and one of them particularly has annoyed me, and that is Super John Bombo's one. Now, nothing against him, he's a great creator who I've been watching for something like 8 years now, but I think the video he made on the topic is kind of misleading on how bad the nerf is and how bad the tower is now, because it seems to miss a lot of what is good about the tower. He kept saying that it wasn't able to do stuff that it literally can still do, and he also titled it something like "The Tower is Dead Now," which certainly is not true. I will of course be linking his video in the description if you want to check it out, but know that there are a lot of YouTube videos discussing this. You can find them if you have a search, and I hope to prove all of them wrong here, not just this particular one. Now, in the video, Super John Bombo attempted to complete Spring Spring on chimps using the fifth fish as his main tower, and long story short, he failed. He gave up. So what I'm going to do is the same thing here on Spring Spring now. As you can see, I'm going to use basically the exact same setup that he used in his video, and I'm going to beat it. This shouldn't be too hard. Spring Spring is only an intermediate map. Of course, I am going to be using the same setup that Super John Bombo had, so slight limitation, but I've got a bit of flexibility there because SJB said himself in the end of his run he was basically placing down random towers just to try his best to survive, so I will be doing the same thing in the last 10 rounds or so. There are two things that I'm going to change mainly. This is where we place the fish and when we buy it, and I'll talk about that when we get there in the run. Now, as you can see, so far we've gone with the same setup that Super John Bombo had. We've gone with the sub start with the Beast Handler, and we're using Adora as the hero. Now, he used a ninja for his random camo detection at the back. I'm going to use a wizard just because I'd like to use it later on. Plus, wizard is like my favorite tower. And then we got to get the airburst darts on the sub, and that'll just survive for a long while now, at least until we get basically to round 40. This is just going to work. And so we come across the first big difference. When you're getting the Beast Handler, it is a lot of small towers that you're buying, because you need to buff it, right, with the other Beast Handlers. You need to get a lot of Beast Handlers in order to make the power value on the, well, in this case, fish, high enough. And what we should be abusing, therefore, is the discount village. This is the same idea when you're using Shinobi Ninjas. Shinobi Ninjas by themselves, not so great, but you buy a discount village near them, suddenly it's pretty good, because that decreases the overall cost of buffing your presumably Grandmaster Ninja with the Shinobis by such a significant margin that it becomes a really good chimp strategy. I think the same thing is true for the Beast Hand. So we're gonna pop down 2 discount villages immediately. The next thing is where we place it. So the one in the middle is actually our fish that we're going to be getting. You see, I'm going to merge the one that was at the front into the one at the middle. We can move the fish all the way from there to the front, because you can put the fish in almost any radius that it has emerged from. Not quite any radius, you can't move it cross map, but that's why I've put the Beast Handler that we're using in the middle, so that then it can go into the radius of the guy at the front, it can go into the radius of the guy at the back. We basically get cross-map range on the fish, which is huge. I'm going to get ready on round 40 for when the MOAB comes in, because yeah, the fish is not powered up yet. We went with 2 discount villages. It's not going to one-shot, but if we micro it just a tiny bit and move it halfway down the map once the Moab goes past, then we can attack the ceramics inside afterwards as well, and then after that we can max it out with a couple extra barracudas. I'm going to keep buying them around these discount villages, and later on the fact that we have extra money lying around is going to be a big help. Okay, so skipping forwards a bit, you can see we have bought jungle drums on the village. I also got an alchemist at the back for the sub so that he can pop the leads, the camo leads in fact, that we're going to get soon. We've got an extra beast handler at the bottom there, so that can be merged in, and then we can move our fish to the bottom path later on if we need to. And I've now got round to buying the Orca, which is the 4th tier. We won't be able to get 5th tier in this run. I mean, it is totally doable, but that's not what Super John Bombo was doing, so that's not what we're going to do either. I will, of course, however, max out the level of the Orca with all of the other beast handlers around these discount villages. It's really nice about this map. You can fit them basically anywhere and they can still see the water, so that's really nice. We do have to get quite a lot of them in order to max it out, because going for tier 2s is much more cost effective than going for tier 3s, so I am just going for tier 2s, but it's fine with the discount villages. It's pretty cheap and we don't need the space anyway, so it's all good. Now something to note here with 63, because as Super John Bombo said in his video, the Orca cannot necessarily pick off all of a wave at once. He was complaining about how it normally would only get one side and it was very RNG based or something. I would beg to differ, because by simply moving the Orca further down the map, he can then nom on that second wave and problem solved, basically, as you can see me doing there. Now the Orca cannot quite deal with everything, as you can see here on 65. It is, after all, only a 4th tier tower, so I'm going to be upgrading the wizard for some cleanup, but of course, as I said, we can just move the Orca to the end of the map because it has cross map range, move it back again, there you go, move it down to the bottom, move it up to the top. We can put it wherever we want and it can attack the Moab. Now I thought we'd just skip ahead here to 78 because that's kind of a difficult round for the Orca. Once again, similar to 63, it cannot deal with both of the paths at once, but if you just simply move it a bit to the other side of the map, once it's dealt with one side it can deal with the other one quite easily. The other thing is the Orca is that while it doesn't do as much damage to MOAB class balloons when it doesn't one-shot them, it kind of one-shots them, and that's what you're there for. It's not going to one-shot all of them, it can't attack all of them, but the ones that it can attack it will one-shot, and that's really helpful. If you compare it to something like Pirate Lord, which also doesn't do a huge amount of damage to MOAB class balloons. I mean, it's pretty reasonable, but it ain't going to be soloing 98 now, is it? But the MOAB class balloons that it uses its ability on go poof. It's really helpful, especially on rounds like 80. So we're going to see round 80 come up here, and funnily enough, the Orca is just going to take it out immediately, no questions asked. This is also really helpful for later on things like 97, which is the 2 reinforced ZOMGs. Now yeah, 97, I don't think anyone would say that's going to be as hard as 98, but the Orca does just deal with it instantly, which is super helpful. And that's what you're buying it for. You're not buying it for the ability to solo the entire game. You're buying it because it's a really helpful tower that can deal with a lot of the balloons. You still need to back it up with stuff. So speaking of backing it up with stuff, I'm about to buy Archmage here as well, because Archmage is a good tower. Archmage would also not be able to solo all the way to round 100, but it's a good tower, and if you back it up with some good towers, then you can beat chimps. What else we're going to be buying? I'm thinking a glue gunner, because one thing that it does struggle with is when you get a lot of MOAB class balloons. Of course, it doesn't have time to eat all of them, so a glue gunner to slow them down at the start and in fact at the end is going to be really helpful. Give the Orca more time to chomp on stuff while it's you know, slowly dragging things into the water. At least the other MOABs don't get out of its range, although like I said, if they do get out of its range, we can just move it. I'm just gonna play through these last few rounds here. As you can see, Orca doing stuff, periodically moving it around a bit to help it take care of the ones that slip through, those mobs there that have slipped through. Can just move it up to the top and it can take care of all of them. As you can see, I got the 2 glue gunners that I promised. We've got Moab glue on the front one and Relentless glue on the back one. In theory, Relentless glue because at the back there will be balloons and balloons will get hit by more Relentless glue. I don't know, I didn't really think about it too hard. I just put 2 glue gunners down. And then I've also got another wizard because like I said, wizard is just my favorite tower and I decided to have another one there. So I'm going to be getting that up to 5th tier a little bit later on once I have the money for it. But yeah, basically just the Orca is doing stuff. As you can see, it's about to hit 1 million pops. Spoil you now, it gets about 1.5 million by the end of the full map. So given that there are about 2 million pops in chimps, it does 3/4 of them. And I don't think it cost us 3/4 of the money. I mean, the upgrade itself, of course, cost 17k, but the Archmage costs 35k, and the Necromancer Wizard guy costs 30k. Not to mention that you can't even say, oh, but the 3rd tier for Fish costs quite a lot, because the 4th tier for Wizard costs 10k also. So the Wizard is definitely costing way more than the Fish, I think, even if you account for all of the extra beast handlers that we're sacrificing. The real reason that it's getting more pops is just because I put it at the front of the map. So it's kind of self-explanatory. I'm not trying to be like, oh, it's better than Archmage, because no, it's not necessarily better than Archmage. I put it at the front of the map. But the point is, it's still a really good tower. And if you put it at the front of the map, you give it the opportunity to get, you know, all the pops in the game, then it will get them, you know. And like I say, it's there we go, it's about 1.5 million there. Now we have the bad, of course, because I could not get the 5th tier, then it's not going to one-shot the bad, unfortunately. I'm going to put that Spike Factory down there just in case something slips through, because the one thing that I don't like about this map, having the defense at the end, is it gets really tight. You don't know if you're going to pop the bad or not. Are you going to leak a couple balloons? The DDT is going to sneak through. So I like just putting something there just to make sure. Because of course we're not one-shotting the bad, and it's going to take a while to pop here. The Orca doesn't do a whole lot of damage to it. No, 100% it got nerfed and it doesn't do much damage to the bad. So we are going to have to rely on the wizards a fair bit here. But as you will see, the bad is going to pop, and then it's just gonna eat both of the ZOMGs as well, which is nice. Use the abilities there of Adora just to clean up a bit. I don't think they were necessary. And yeah, chimps complete. So in conclusion, the Orca is a very specialized tower. It does single target damage, specifically to MOAB class balloons, and it will just eat them. It one-shots them. It's great. It does do thrashing damage. The thrashing damage is a lot lower than it was before. Absolutely. But what you buy the tower for is to periodically just delete a ZOMG. In fact, periodically, it's every couple of seconds. And like I said earlier, if you compare it to something like Pirate Lord, I would say it's probably better than Pirate Lord's, like one of the best towers in the game, realistically. Of course, there are advantages to Pirate Lord, there are advantages to Orca, and if you consider all the extra beast handlers you've got to basically sacrifice to it, Orca probably does cost a little bit more. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's still a good tower, and it still does a good job, I think. Anyway, of course, all of this is opinions, and like I said at the start of the video, I'm not here to tell you whether the nerf was correct or not. I honestly don't know. What I'm here to say is that it's still a good tower. The tower is not dead, the tower is still totally usable, and I plan on continuing to use it. So that's my bit said. There you go. It can successfully complete chimps. There you go. But anyway, bird's better anyway. So that's all I had to say. I'm gonna end this video here. Bye!